Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program, it's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundless success to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And having grown up as a youngster in the Watergate era, I believe the Biden cover up is far more egregious. Its implications are hugely larger than anything involved in Watergate. And what I'm referring to is the auto signing. And you look at all recent executive orders, including pardons, they match up exactly, which points to Biden may or may have not been present during this because they were done with what's called an auto signer. Your thoughts? And does it do anything legally to these actions?
Okay, let's start with who's in charge.
Not him.
It does certainly give credence to the idea that Biden was not the one calling the shots, and calls into question how much he actually knew about what was going on. In fact, Mike Johnson
Yes.
just reported having a conversation with Biden about an executive order that had just been instituted that Biden said he didn't do. He didn't know anything about it.
Auto signed.
So, yes, it was auto signed. So, it does bring up a lot of questions as to who was in charge. The auto sign itself does not indicate that any of the executive orders, any of the pardons, anything like that are not valid. Auto signers are used routinely for legal documents, for checks. You can consider it the same thing as a digital signature. So the using an auto signer is not going to invalidate any of those things. What would invalidate them is if you could actually prove that Biden had no knowledge that they were being signed.
Yes, I agree. Legally, it probably is nothing's going to happen here. However, looking at the whole question of who is in charge, um, I don't think he really. I would not be shocked if he had no idea about these pardons and some, especially later executive orders. I think the whole term you called it back what over 4 years now that your sources had him having dementia back before he even became president. Biggest cover up maybe in American history. It could have led to World War III. And it points to the fact that the Democrats, every party wants power, but the Democrats will easily put their own lust for power ahead of America's best interest. You had Democrat upon traditional media, mainstream media, talking about how brilliant, and him and Einstein were basically in the same category. All of them knew he was blown out.
Yeah, I can see some of them not knowing. Some of the Congress people that didn't meet with him on a regular basis, the lower level folks,
Agreed.
I can see them not knowing about it. Corinne Jean-Pierre, there's no way she didn't know. And she kept reporting to the American people, oh, behind closed doors, he runs run circles around us.
And you know something that's interesting, just to interject something really quickly. Kevin McCarthy was talking about that. I didn't know he had a good sense of humor because he was kind of chuckling that every time he went into the office, Biden needed cue cards and would talk about the same thing over and over, show him the pool. It was just unbelievable. And then it's also come to light about the mini Oval Office that was utilized because it was better for teleprompters. The whole thing is really scary. You had a hot war in Ukraine. Um, was heading for a real bad outcome. This is needs investigation. And also needs investigation who was in charge. I obviously don't have to be a genius to figure out a hard radical left had a coup in the White House. There's no question in my mind. No doubt. Open borders, Green New Deal on steroids. Absolutely. And doing things at the end to put poison pills, to use a corporate term, in Trump's initiatives. There's no way Uncle Joe had the brains to do that. Your thoughts?
I don't know whether or not he had the brains to do the poison pills, but I honestly don't think he had the desire to. At that point, he was done. He didn't care who won. It was fairly obvious he wasn't really supporting Harris.
Mm-mm.
So so I don't think he cared what Trump was going to do. He was going to go off into the sunset, and I don't think he had any inclination to protect the Democrats after they pushed him out. So
I think
those
that is an
pardons.
exceptionally good point. I believe, yes, I still contend, obviously, it's not a big deal that he was not capable of doing what happened. But also, to your point, I think that's even more important. I believe when you look at the big picture, he already checked out. He was he was always at the beach anyway. He didn't give a flying, you know what? Hated Harris at that point, hated Obama. Didn't He was always a selfish sob, and he really didn't. I don't think I agree with you 100%. I don't think he cared enough. Some of the pardons he might have cared about, but not that.
Not even the pardons. I don't think he I mean, in particular, protecting the January 6th committee, I don't think he had anything to do with that.
I agree with that. Hunter is. I would think he has
Oh
something to
no,
do with that.
the Hunter pardon, I have no doubt, was, if not him, then Jill. But that one, that,
Jill. Yes, she snuck. No, this is a first. She snuck into the auto signer and did it. I don't think, I'm saying that in jest, but I'm not so sure. I'm not correct. How do you like that?
and I don't think it would be anything that complicated. I think she would just tell Joe, Joe, you're going to do this for Hunter, and he would go, oh, okay, it's Hunter, and use the auto signer. And that's another thing. People have been making a big deal out of this auto signer, but there's also another very plausible possibility for this. Dementia is also a symptoms of Parkinson's. We
Hmm.
saw him fall, we saw him shake. There are a number of people that had been speculating that he had Parkinson's. Even if he had intended to sign something, he may not have been able to hold the pen steady enough, so he would resort to an auto signer.
I would agree. That's a good point, as always, Dr. Lopkin. But I don't really feel sorry for the SOB because he's always an SOB. I know him better, not personally. I know of him better than you. When I was living in Philly, Delaware's right there, and he was always a topic of conversation. Even, and you know this, Johnny Carson he was always a joke,
Oh,
and
yes.
he was always not. He threatened Reagan if he didn't get his way that he would leak sensitive information. He looked at his watch during the return of the fallen heroes in Afghanistan, and yet also even more recently, he was willing to jeopardize the lives of innocent, brave, talented Americans in the space station who were stranded there with no way out. Uh, and Musk had a solution, something that's going on actually right now. But Biden, playing petty politics, I should say, did not allow him to rescue. That's pretty sick. That's really not well. That's not well.
No, it isn't. And NASA has come out and said, "Oh no, the reason we left them up there was for budgetary reasons."
Oh yeah, okay,
Really?
okay, yeah.
We
You know how
we
dangerous.
overspend on everything else. You're not going to overspend to rescue people?
Yeah, and the other thing is, I mean, I wish them all the best, but I wouldn't want to be them because the physical implications of being in a space station for that period of time, not the best.
No,
Not the
there are
best.
there are a lot of drawbacks physically to them being there. However, recent studies have actually shown there could be benefits as well. So, one of the things, if our audience knows what telomeres are basically how you can tell how old somebody is. They're the ends of DNA strands. And as you
Yeah.
get older, they get more and more deteriorated. Well, it turns out that extended stays in space actually extend your life and extend those telomeres. So who knows? They might have bought another year or two of life by being stuck there.
Maybe they can thank Uncle Joe.
Right.
Looks like everything Uncle Joe does. He's just by dumb luck, because he's never done anything. There's a whole show I actually saw on Newsmax, just going through his whole brilliant history, starting from him being a senator, like what Gates said in his book, that everything he ever said or did was the exact opposite of what should have been.
Right. But
Our presidents.
remember, even a broken clock is right twice a day. So he's bound to get something right eventually.
He did it. He's out of office, but he finally got it right. That's true. Implications. Talking about political implications. A lot I've heard and read about Chuck Schumer. Before we get into that, it was really funny. Dershowitz lambasted him, said he always hated the guy, and Call said that his stance on Israel was despicable. And I really do love when, with the Irish, the president of Ireland, uh, Trump went off on a riff and basically saying, "Yeah, Chuck used to be Jewish, but now I think he's Palestinian." But anyway, that's just an aside. But it's probably not so far from the truth. He went along, he caved, and radicals, leftists, which is actually the Democratic Party, AOC, and among others, Jeffries, are kind of pulling the plug on Chucky.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation because keep in mind, everybody that you just mentioned that wants to pull the plug, none of them actually has a say in the matter because none of them are in the Senate.
But
They
hold on before you go on. There is a lot of talk. She can't pull the plug, but AOC primarying him.
AOC could primary him. AOC doesn't
What
stand
do
a
you think? What
chance
do you
in
think
New
the
York.
chances of that? You don't. Okay, go ahead. That's
She
good. Go
she does
elaborate on that.
yeah,
Do
she
you think?
doesn't
First of all,
stand
do
it.
you think? Well, hold on. First of all, do you think she will primary him and then get into her chances success?
Well, there was talk about her primarying him previously. So I think that is what she intends to do at some point. I don't know if it'll be the next election or not, but she does not stand a chance because while she has the power of the Democratic Party behind her in her district, she's not going to be able to take Long Island. She's not going to be able to take Staten Island. She's not going to be able to take upstate New York. Remember, in the last New York gubernatorial race, Hochul only won by 4 points. And Hochul doesn't have anywhere near the baggage that AOC does.
No, one of them being an anti-Semite, but other than that, she's great. There you go.
Yeah. So,
You know,
so-
her hatred, her opposition to Israel goes well beyond anything about Israel.
oh,
And leave it to
absolutely.
Sanders to be in bed with her, not literally, figuratively. Probably would like to be literally, but anyway, that's another subject. Yes, so Bernie, I can give a
But
shout out to him too.
as for what Schumer did, if any of the Democrats actually stop and think about it,
That's
they're going
impossible.
they're going to realize that Schumer actually did the best thing he could for the party. Here's what most people have missed. When a normal budget is passed, it's not just the budget bill itself. It comes with reports. And each of those reports details how the money for each department is supposed to be spent. And Congress has to approve that. This is why the Democrats were up in arms about this continuing resolution, because it did not have any of those reports, which means the executive branch, while they can't say, oh, well, we're moving this money from this department to that department, they can cut any program they want within a department. It's now within the executive branch's bailiwick. However, if they had shut down the government, Trump would have had the ability to label any department non essential and get rid of them, just cut them. And then when the government came back, they had the case. Oh, well, look, they were non essential. Everything went fine without them. We don't need them.
Yes. My only question would be, I agree with that. Very good analysis. However, isn't this more about, like, let's say it's when you have a bad relationship, someone could drop a teacup and you go off on them, not because that's such a horrific offense, it's because you've built up animosity. Isn't this really just an opportunity for the radical Dems to basically express their discontent with Chucky?
Yes, it is. They're throwing yet another temper tantrum because they feel that Chuck Schumer let down their base, because their base is calling for them to fight Trump with everything they've got.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the problem. If you look at all the recent polls, the Democratic base is getting more and more to the left, more and more determined to fight Trump on everything, but
Mm-hmm.
that base is getting smaller and smaller. So
Yes,
that
you ever hear of the Whig Party? There you go.
exactly, if they continue to placate that base, they may very well be finished for the next 12 years as a party, because they're alienating centrist Democrats, independents, basically anybody without Trump derangement syndrome at this
Yes.
point.
Can I run a theory by you, Mr. Dr. Lopkin? I should
Go
say
ahead.
Dr. Lopkin. And that is, I like this analysis. Like, the Democrats went out into the woods after Reagan, after FDR, so did the Republicans. Yeah, I get Ike and all that, but essentially they were out in the woods. I think, what do you think of this theory? That with social media, AI, the just quickening pace of daily activities, I think, well, you said something 12 years is too long. You could be extinct. You could be T Rex. Like, what was 12 years 50 years ago is no longer 12 years. How do you like that one?
That is a
You can
poss
become irrelevant very quickly.
You can become irrelevant very quickly. In fact, in the latest CNN poll, now, personally, I believe this was people just protesting the Democratic Party in the poll, but 1% of people polled actually said they had never heard of the Democratic Party. Now, I find that very hard to believe, so I believe that was people protesting. But
No, I don't.
you,
You know why? It goes back to last week's podcast. I'm making kind of a joke, but I'm being humorous. I think it goes into the dismantling of the education Department of
it's yes,
Education. I believe there's a lot of people who really don't know what it is. I'm
it
serious.
it
Nothing to
could
do with
be.
politics, just because they're so stupid. And you know what I love? You ever see interviews with college kids nowadays? I have no idea what they're teaching in college. I don't know, but it's really scary. Like really
It
scary.
it
Like
it is.
unbelievable.
They're lacking basic knowledge. It is very scary, and it's not just colleges. It's the public school system as well.
Oh no, no.
When
Let me just say one thing. I'm using college as an example of the apex of education.
yes,
You were 100% right. So if that's the apex, oh my god, oh my, are you kidding me?
yeah,
Like
no, our
like things you think these people are making it up. It's like a joke.
yeah, no, our educational system is in dire need of a complete overhaul. But what the Democrats are doing right now is, they're kowtowing to the smallest group. The only reason that I say they'll be in the woods for a while, but not necessarily extinct, is because at this point in 2005, I guess it would be the equivalent year, nobody had ever heard of Barack Obama. At this point, 1 year into the George H.W. Bush presidency, nobody had ever heard of Bill Clinton. So there is still that possibility that right now a completely unknown Democrat could come along and save them.
Dr. Lopkin, 100% correct. And here would be the title of the editorial essay. It'd be without a dark horse, without a savior, the Democratic Party is finished. Because I agree with you. If they get a Clinton, if they get an Obama, all bet 100. Shapiro, makes it. But without that, if they, with the current cast of characters, but in 12 years most of them will be dead. But anyway, with AOCs and all those that are knuckleheads, zero chance. How do you like that? Even Jeffries is a moron.
Yeah, no, if they keep leaning towards AOC, if they keep leaning towards Jeffries, they're finished. They need to realize Clinton brought them back to the center. Obama, honestly, I think Obama won primarily because people had such disgust for George W. Bush. I think that's
Yes,
what put.
and McCain made some really tragic, really horrible mistakes during that campaign. So I think it was a combination of both. 100% agree.
And quite
Yeah, George
frankly,
W. was a disaster.
yeah, and I think quite frankly, the beginnings of DEI had a lot to do with it. I know tons of diehard liberal Democrats who couldn't stand Obama, but they voted for him because they didn't want to be labeled racist.
Yes, and the irony of that, Doctor, is that race relations were never better before Obama, okay, BO, and after Obama, they were almost never worse. Not literally, but figuratively.
Yeah.
And I also think we already talked about it last week, so we don't need to elaborate on it. I think he's become almost completely irrelevant. And I think I love the comment that his library initiative is indicative of his presidency. A lot of glitz at the beginning, but in the end, a total failure. I like that one.
Yeah, I think that's a very good analogy. I actually had a conversation with someone a few days ago where I actually said, it would not surprise me for in private moments right now, Barack Obama is probably swearing a blue streak at Biden because his legacy's gone, his power
Gone.
is gone, and it was all.
Gone.
If Biden had not run for president, Obama would probably still be relevant.
One very good. I like that. Excellent, excellent. But you look at the whole Democratic Party, and this is not a joke. They're the people that are out front thinking, which is boggles the mind, thinking they have a real chance is Buttigieg, Walsh, Harris, and Newsom. And Newsom just is asking for a $3 billion bailout because of overspending due to illegals. But if that's the bench for the current A team, no, know about that resurrection.
No, that's why I say it has to be a dark horse. It's got to be somebody that we haven't heard of yet because the folks who are in the spotlight are not capable. Recent polls recent polls asked who you thought was the leader of the Democratic Party, and
They didn't.
AOC,
Yeah,
yeah, AOC had the most, most people saying, "Oh, AOC is the leader of the party," and even she only came in at 10%.
yeah. Most people would like they had no idea. It is definitely a party in disarray, and I really do believe if Trump next couple of years is successful, and you look at the senatorial map, it's not looking good for the Democrats because of some bow outs. Even the congressional, usually that's a disaster. I think that maybe it's wishful thinking. You don't want to count your chickens before they hatch, especially with egg prices today. But I think that it was maybe a good thing for the conservative movement, for MAGA, to have that respite of getting so people would have a good taste what liberalism, when enacted, was all about. Unbridled liberalism. I think it was a good dose of medicine. Mother used to
Yeah,
say.
no, I have to agree with that. In fact, Greg Gutfeld refers to the Biden presidency as the world's worst halftime show. And now that Trump's back in, we're back in the game. But, and it's funny because you mentioned egg prices. Egg prices for the last 3 weeks have dropped. Gas prices,
Inflation is down.
yes, gas prices have gone down 15% since Trump took office. So you're starting to see the end of all of the problems that were caused by the liberal agenda.
Potentially even in Ukraine. And my question to you, Doctor, is when these, if and when these things happen, what is legacy media? What is the Democratic apparatus? What do they get to? What do they have to say? That it's too much peace, too low prices. I mean, you kind of run out of bullshit.
Well, with Ukraine, they'll go back to the Russia storyline. Trump is in
They
the
will,
the
yes.
pocket of Putin. He's
He
a
gave away the
pup.
store.
Yes, he's a puppet of Russia. They'll go back to that tired chestnut. Um, in terms of inflation and all of that, we're already seeing it. You know, it's never going to be good enough. They didn't care about inflation when it was happening
Never.
under the
Not at all.
Democratic administration. But as soon as Trump came in, oh, why hasn't he fixed it yet? Why?
No,
Because he's not even in for 2 full months yet. It's
I, yeah, 100%. It seems like overall, you talk about their, let's just say they're not having a good time. The Democrat part of it is, I think they very juvenile reactions. How do you like? I'll play amateur psychologist. I think they talk before they think, just like a 6 year old kid. So you can't continue to throw shit against the wall and expect it'll stick. The Nazi thing is kind of played out. I like "Start Me Up" by the Stones back in '81, but I'm kind of sick of it now. It gets a little old. The whole Hitler, Jesus, it's amazing. Hitler. Now Musk is Hitler. Who's not Hitler actually?
well, again, every Republican presidential candidate in my lifetime has been characterized as Hitler by the left. I mean, going back to Reagan and Ford, it that's
You know
just
what I like about
their
that though?
go-to.
It's really funny because Bush, George W, was Hitler and Stalin, and then
Yep.
when he started looking better to the neocons and the military-industrial media complex, now they love George W, even though he's a complete f up. Kind of scary, isn't it? But what do you think of this? Newt Gingrich said that the judicial and radical judges are the last great hope for radical uh, liberalism. I actually believe it's true. In fact, a judge was blocking shipping gangbangers out. He's against deporting gangbangers, and he's been served with letters of impeachment from the House. But I mean, isn't it true that every time, and I don't think their founding fathers intended this, that every action you get a radical activist judge involved? You can go judge shopping. That's all you do.
Well, that's what the Democratic Party has been doing. They've been venue shopping to find judges that will do what they want to stop Trump. The judge in question who blocked the gang members from being dropped off in El Salvador, who's right now up in arms because Trump did not order the plane to come back
Too bad.
when the judge said so, under the auspices that the plane was already in international waters. The judge had no jurisdiction. But interestingly enough, it's come out that that judge's wife runs an NGO that works with illegal immigrants.
Oh, shocking, shocking.
Yes.
And that's the other thing about this whole Doge thing. It's one big slush fund, and that's why they're freaking out. Because it's not the first time Obama was into cutting waste. Gore, Clinton Gore, they had the whole backdrop of all the piles of bureaucratic redundancy, but it's because it's hitting too close to home. Your thoughts,
Yes,
Doctor?
that's absolutely correct. Bill Clinton actually did manage to cut the budget and cut the federal workforce. Obama pushed very hard. I think his big problem with cutting the federal workforce and cutting the budget was he made the mistake of putting Joe Biden in charge of it. Well, let's face it, Biden wasn't going to touch any program that was enriching his family members.
Good point. And plus, he's dumb. Politically incorrect, but he's a moron. Very interesting. You look at the Trump effect. Israel was up against it. They had their backs against the wall, literally and figuratively, with Biden withholding aid, the whole thing, right? Um, I believe there's a new day in the Middle East. I believe there will be another Abraham Accord. I think Iran and the Houthis. We just had a major air strikes. Unlike Biden, and think how far we sank. The Houthis, also Rans would launch missiles at us. We'd take them out, and instead of eviscerating them, we'd knock out one of their missile sites. I mean, pathetic. So I believe that the Trump pronouncement that he's going to treat any Houthi aggression as Iranian aggression is noteworthy. Your thoughts?
It is noteworthy. And in fact, it is a new day for the Middle East because when Biden would go out against the Houthis, again, they would, as you said, they would take out a missile site, but that would be pretty much the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Here, we had a major strike against the Houthis, not just us taking them out the way Biden would take out a missile site, but we coordinated the attack with the Israelis attacking Hamas in Gaza. So
Awesome.
so now we've got coordination between Israel and the US, which never happened under the Biden
God,
administration.
no. No,
I
because you know why? It's not. It's a rhetorical question. Don't even bother answering it, because he would get beyond backlash from the anti-Semitic slash Israeli wing, a growing wing, by the way, of the Democratic Party.
All right, and now
Freak out.
I Iran has multiple sanctions against it. They're not getting the money that Biden was funneling into them. So they do not have the resources to rearm both Hamas and the Houthis. So by taking them both out simultaneously, that puts a lot of pressure on Iran. Iran is either going to have to step up and actually get involved themselves in this war, which they don't really want because they know they'd be obliterated, or
Obliterated.
they're going to have to pull back and surrender. They don't want that either, but at least that way they get to live.
I think if I was going to put odds on it, I would say it's greater than a 70% chance that there will be some kind of military action, including the Israelis, the United States, in the near future. Inevitable. Because Trump does not back down, and the Houthis, they cannot be contained and controlled. I mean, there's nothing in Yemen but firing missiles. That's what you do on a Saturday night. Okay, so there's nothing else to do. They're controlled by Iran, but yet they're not really in control. I think they launch another strike against an American or other sea vessel. I think there could be hell to pay. Because I believe no, wait, hold on. Before you get that, I want your opinion. I think Trump wants to get this over with.
Oh, absolutely. Trump does not want any of these wars going on forever. He wanted to get us out of Afghanistan, but there was no good way to do it, so he left us in. Whereas Biden pulled out no matter what the situation was, and you saw the results of that. But I think what's going to happen is he's leaving Hamas and Hezbollah to Israel. He has said that he will give the Israelis anything they need to take care of the job. I think Trump will take care of the Houthis. And this is complete supposition. I've got no information on this part of it, but I do know that there is a growing resistance among Iranian civilians. And I think Trump is going to find a way to fan the flames of that within Iran.
No question about it. Very good, 100%. Now, to conclude on two lighter notes, Dr. Lobkin, our podcast is on the ascend, I believe. Some ascend, some go down, some never take off. Michelle, I mean, it's got to be shitty being in the Obama household because that podcast, wow, are you kidding me?
Well,
there's like baking with Aunt Martha that gets 200,000. With all the promotion, without the promotion, she would have gotten 5.
Yeah, it is amazing given Michelle
Obama's
Obama's name and the backing she had, how badly that went. However, that does seem to be the trend now. It happened with Michelle Obama's podcast. It's happening with Gavin Newsom's new podcast. They don't seem to understand that a podcast is programming. It's got to appeal to the listener. It's not about the host. And the only reason for Gavin Newsom and Michelle Obama, and to a lesser extent, Meghan Markle, whose podcast also flamed out, the only reason they're going into these podcasts is because they want to be Joe Rogan. Well, you know what?
I got news for them. I'm not a career coach. I can save them a lot of money. Just that's the goal. Stop immediately because I did hear and see segments of the Michelle podcast. Woo! Anyway, no one listened to it more than 10 minutes. It was effing believably bad. How do you?
No,
well, like watching paint dry. It was awful.
It was terrible. And I mean, the thing
and also, she's a liar. She was talking about how they grew up in an apartment and slept it, which is a little creepy, but that's another issue. And then they lived in like a 3-story house. Unbelievable. These people are sick. They can't stop themselves.
Well,
they always have to claim poverty.
Right. She was taking a page from the Kamala playbook, where
I love that.
Making up her past. But the basic problem with these podcasts is they want to be the voice of the Democratic Party in the podcast realm. This whole thing started during the campaign when Trump would be going on podcasts and people responded to him. And when he went on Joe Rogan, that was game over for the campaign. And
Goodbye. Yep.
the Democrats keep saying, well, you know what? We need our own Joe Rogan. We need our own Joe
You don't
Rogan.
have any.
The problem is they had their own Joe Rogan. His name was Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was a diehard Democrat before the party pushed him away.
Yeah. So one more comment about the election. You people, chastise Michelle. I'll be all right. Kamala for not going on. It actually could have been the right decision because unscripted, it could have been even worse. Because Joe Rogan's a nice, decent guy, but I think he might just start laughing. It would have been a disaster.
I mean, he might have started laughing. It's completely plausible. The fact of the matter is, Harris cannot do a conversation, which is what the Joe Rogan podcast is. She needs a teleprompter, she needs prepared notes, and that would not have flown. Even importantly than that, her people were trying to limit the interview to half an hour maximum, and nobody believes she would have stuck around for the whole half hour. Donald Trump did 3 hours on the show. She would have looked pathetic trying to end the interview after 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, it was not a good look, and she was not a good candidate, and thank God. She met with her demise because my blood pressure would be a lot higher because my retirement would be looking pretty shitty. Anyway, last little tidbit here on a more lighter note is a French parliamentarian, how do you like that, is demanding that we send back the Statue of Liberty. Yes, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I quake in my boots about the French. When they say boo, I jump.
Oh yeah, it's because the French have such an absolutely intimidating military history throughout the 20th century, and
a history of bravery and sticking by their ideals. Like, for instance, getting us involved in Vietnam and then stabbing us on the back by in the mid to late 70s. I mean, to late 60s. Yeah, that's the French. And isn't it bigger? I'm not a big Rumsfeld fan, but he did point to that. He did have a comment about old and new Europe. I actually think Western Europe. We talked about that last week. Like, since the EU, they've basically flamed out. I mean, we don't have to get into particulars, but I think like Eastern Europe is really the new bellwether in Europe. I think you're talking almost failed economies and failed societies. I'm really serious about that.
If you take a serious look at the EU, essentially what happened when they agreed to form the European Union was that Germany conquered Europe without firing a shot. They have been calling the shots. They have the strongest economy in Europe, and everybody has been kowtowing to them. The Eastern European countries had a relationship like that with Russia, and they are in no particular hurry to have that happen to them again. So
yeah, I agree with you, Dr. Lopkin, but I also think it's the EU's liberal sickness that has infected Western Europe as well. Like Davos, before that group and their geniuses got together and told the EU what to do, the EU was right there competing with the United States, and many people thought they would be the world economic power. But I think it's more about not so much Germany's control, but their internal rot for the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you take a look at what's been going on in each individual Western European country, you get a very good idea of what would happen to America under
100%.
a Kamala Harris presidency. This is what happens when leftist regulations, leftist policies go awry. I mean, it is absolutely mind boggling to me that England, who, let's face it, going back, to World War II, the American British relationship was always characterized as, oh, it's a very special relationship. Those were the words that they used throughout the Reagan administration, throughout the Carter administration, throughout the Clinton administration. It's a very special relationship. And yet, British lawmakers tried to make it a criminal offense for Americans in the United States to criticize them on social media. I hate to break it to you guys, but we have something called freedom of speech. And most people do not realize this, but Europe does not have real freedom of speech. They do not have freedom of the press. The government can crack down on this anytime they want. Canada is in the same situation. I have been speaking to Canadians, and there is a very strong possibility that if the Liberal Party, which Trudeau just stepped down and his successor is now leading, if they win the next prime minister's election, Canada may face civil war because Western Canada has had it with them.
Yes, almost a microcosm, not a micro, almost a microcosm of what is happening in, I believe it's Idaho and Washington. Because you get to a point you have nothing in common.
Yes,
like Portland and the farming communities of Washington have a lot more in common with Idaho.
Yes, you've got communities in Oregon and Washington who have been pushing to secede from their states and join Idaho. Now, honestly, because of the way that has to happen legally, I don't see it occurring. But
I agree.
You are starting to see that there are there has been in Vermont one county that has been talking about secession for almost 20 years now. And the reason is this is a fairly well-to-do community. Most of the wealth in Vermont is located in this county. And of course, they pay 90% of the taxes. They're supporting the entire state who keeps pushing this liberal agenda. They keep electing Bernie Sanders. And this county has had it with the state of Vermont.
I think it's going to become an increasing trend in the United States. I think states and regions, talking about Canada, are going to be getting divorced. And that's a good topic for other podcasts. But yet again, Dr. Lopkin, another exciting podcast, and our listeners can contribute to the content and voice their opinions, unlike in England, correct?
Yes. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Go to the Carnivore Radio Facebook page, message us, and let us know your thoughts. You can also go to xvadio.com/connect. Contact us there and tell us what's important to you. What do you think about what's going on in the world? And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
See you next week, Dr. Lopkin.
We'll see you then.